Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 273. Today we're talking all about impulse control, one of those topics that I am sure you can relate to. This is going to be a good one. Lots of practical tips, lots of suggestions for different types of impulse control challenges with your kiddos. Before we begin, I want to thank CTC Math for continually supporting the podcast. We really appreciate them. If you're looking for a math program, check out ctcmath.com. And now, pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, relax for a little while, and let's get on with today's episode. Hey there. Okay, so I know this is a topic that many of you struggle with, right? Kids and impulse control. It seems like everybody who homeschools gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent kids of any kind struggle with helping their kids control their impulses at some point or another, right? Developing impulse control is tough with these kids. Now, obviously, developing impulse control is tough with all kids, right? There's a reason we say, oh, he's just a boy, or, oh, she's still little. We're working on it. But it feels like this just goes on forever with our gifted 2E and otherwise neurodivergent kids. And it's because it does. We talked a couple weeks ago about asynchrony, and we've talked before that about executive function skills. And the truth of the matter is our neurodivergent kiddos struggle with executive function skills and asynchrony, which leads to impulse control challenges. It's not that they're bad or wrong or troublemakers or whatever, though they could be, they're kids, right? It's that it's a little harder for them to control their impulses than other children their age. It's typical for our atypical kids. And so we want to develop practical strategies to help our kiddos develop impulse control, especially in social, emotional, and academic settings. But we want to be supportive and flexible in our approach. This month in the Learners Lab, this month of March here, we are working on impulse control with the kids, and we're doing talks and Q&As with the parents about developing impulse control. Every month in the Learners Lab is a membership community that was founded by me and the Raising Lifelong Learners team for families who are homeschooling neurodivergent kiddos. And each month, we focus on a theme related to social and emotional issues or challenges or struggles that our kids have, or things like executive function skills and managing expectations and things like that. And within that theme, the kids work on knowing what it means, why it's important to, in this case, develop impulse control. How does it affect them socially, emotionally, academically, maturity-wise? And what kinds of things learning how to control those impulses can gain you as you grow. And then we also work on creative thinking exercises that can facilitate our creative thinking skills, our flexibility, our critical thinking skills. And we do this usually through drawing activities or artwork or an online type forum. We have flexible thinking exercises and brainstorming and all sorts of different things. And then we also do Q&As, and the kids have clubs where they can get together and chat with other kids like themselves. And so the community that we've built in there works on these kinds of things because it's important for our neurodivergent kids to know that there's nothing wrong with them. But these skills might develop a little bit more slowly than others, and it's still important for them to work on controlling those things. So today we're diving into that tricky skill. We're diving into how to teach and work on impulse control with our kids, whether it's like butting into conversations, rushing through their work, melting down when things don't go their way. Impulse control challenges can make homeschooling feel like an uphill battle. But don't worry, we're going to deal with practical strategies to help that. I remember really dealing with this with my 3 older kids, and I'm dealing with this with my younger one again, because our kids have lots going on in their brains and want to do the things that they want to do, and they don't really like being interrupted, and then sometimes feel like they're being put upon. One of the things we're working on with my youngest right now is screen boundaries. Because I was traveling a lot with my older daughter, and so she was home with my oldest son, who's 22, and his 15-year-old sister, and obviously they weren't as strict about homeschooling and screen time as I would have been, and so he got into some bad habits. So now it's frustrating for him when he has to stop doing what he's been doing consistently for 2 months. And so we're working on his reactions to being asked to get off or being asked to do something different than video games. And so impulse control in his case is lashing back out verbally at me when I come in to try to correct the behavior or change the course of what he's doing. And so we're back to revisiting some of those practical strategies to help. Here's the thing. Learning how to control impulses matters because impulse control is a key to social successes, emotional regulation, and academic growth. Neurodivergent kids with ADHD, autism, kids who are gifted or twice exceptional often struggle with this. But homeschooling gives us the flexibility to support them in creative ways. So what is impulse control? Very simply, impulse control is the ability to pause and think before acting. My husband used to say just very quickly and in an encapsulated way for my oldest, think before do instead of do before think. This is a skill that develops over time and truly can be strengthened with practice. Again, though, I want to say this with a caveat. Your kids develop asynchronously, and so some of your kids will be able to develop impulse control more quickly than others, and they're likely to develop it more slowly than neurotypical children. So you need to keep that in mind when you're working with your kiddos and you're working on this skill, that it's not necessarily them being bad or having struggles with the direction you're giving them. It's that it takes a little bit more time for some of our kids, especially our neurodivergent kids, to be able to control the do before think impulse. So why do our neurodivergent kiddos struggle more with impulse control than neurotypical children? One of the main reasons is the difference in their executive function skills. Executive function skills develop more slowly oftentimes in our neurodivergent kids. And remember, executive function skills encompass all of the things that allow your brain to do all of the things it needs to do. So planning, prioritizing, task initiation, emotional regulation, all of that stuff. And I will link some episodes and posts about executive function skills in the show notes for this episode. So you can check those out over on the show notes page. But executive function struggles cause struggles with impulse control. So do the emotional intensity and sensory processing challenges that go along with neurodivergence. And so we need to provide unique opportunities to help our kids work on these skills. One of the ways we can do that is to create a flexible learning environment. Our kiddos who have impulse control challenges need to have an alternative kind of way of learning. We need to make sure that their brains, which tend to seek novelty, are getting novel things to do throughout the day. So this means shorter lessons, more frequent changing up of things, and breaking the day up. One of the strategies that we've been using as we're trying to break apart the impulse control issues that go along with screen time is every evening before he goes to bed, my youngest turns in the keyboard and the mouse for the computer. And it's stored in my office until he gets it back the next day. And before he can use that computer to play games like he does some chores, he does his schoolwork, and usually I have him do some other kind of activity that's not related to a screen. And then I'll give it to him and I'll say, okay, set a timer for 45 minutes and you have 45 minutes on it. And then you need to do something else. So we've been breaking it up that way. having him go through short lessons and short activities that help around the house and things like that, and then a little bit of time on the computer and a little bit of time off and a little bit of time on and a little bit of time off. So we want to be flexible and we want to help them regulate themselves by helping to regulate the schedule. We want to give them space to practice life skills in a real life kind of low stress setting. We work on doing things at the kitchen table or on the couch, laying on the floor, curled up with a tablet, and then interspersing dishes and laundry and things like that. Real life skills, low stress, and we roll with the punches. So if impulses take over, we stop, we talk about it, we go back and do something else. Homeschool gives us the ability to tailor our lessons and our strategies to each of our children's needs. So it's really the perfect environment to work on impulse control issues with our kids. Sometimes our kids struggle with social impulse control, like peer and family interactions. They often interrupt conversations, they struggle with turn taking in games and discussions, or they react too quickly in conflicts with siblings or friends. Some of the things that we can do to help our kiddos out when we are seeing that these are problems is we can role play. We can act out social situations with our kids and we can practice different responses. There are lots of games out there that do role playing. Even like games like charades will allow you to act out emotions and reactions to things. So try to find some of those. If you are listening and you are a member of the Learners Lab, we've got some of those games back in the archives of our resources. So from past social and emotional theme challenges, we have some different strategy games and things like that. So pour through the archives or ask a member who's been around for a while to point you in the direction of that. If you are somebody who's been on the fence about joining, you can always join for a month and then cancel. But when you join, you have access to, we're on our 5th year of the community, 4.5 years of content that you can pull from that includes activities and games and resources and lessons. You would have access to these games as well. You could play the wait time game. Encourage your kiddos to pause and count to 5 before responding in conversations. Model this for them too. You could say something like, okay, I really want to answer you and I want to stay calm, so just give me a second to count to 5 or to really think about my answer before I share it with you. So you can model this, and homeschooling gives us the perfect opportunity to model things like this. Another way you can work on these conflict resolution type things and interruption and social impulse control challenges is you can play lots of games with your kids. Board games are great for impulse control challenges. They work on turn taking and patience in a natural way. And you can also do collaborative activities where you're planning together an outing for an upcoming day. You're working through different activities together or different challenges together. But play games and do things as a group, as a family unit, so that you're working on those social skills. Because the truth is, sibling conflicts happen all the time. Parents and kids have struggles with each other all the time. So this is a natural way for them to work on controlling their social impulses before it becomes a problem or before they lose friendships over it. Hey there. Okay, you've heard me talk about CTC Math for a long time. And I've been sharing testimonials from other people about it, but I want to share my own right now because it's been a while since I've talked about how we're using CTC Math. CTC is an amazing sponsor. They support our work here at the podcast. They actually sponsor a lot of different homeschool businesses and magazines and events because they're so committed to making sure that the homeschool resources you have at your fingertips are available to you, that you have access to what you need when you need it. I love CTC Math for that part of who they are, but I also love CTC Math as a customer. I have been a paying customer for years and years. My kids are using it in very different ways, and this is what I want to talk about. I've talked before about its adaptability, but let's talk about this. I'm 16 years into homeschooling. This is my 16th year, and our kids are using it very differently. I've got one kiddo who's very advanced in math. That kiddo is a grade level and a half ahead, and I have their level set to mastery at 90%, meaning they have to get 90% or above to move on to the next set of math problems because that child doesn't have to speed through it. They're already a year and a half ahead. And so I want them, if they're going to continue to accelerate, I want them to accelerate with deep understanding. My other kiddo who's currently using it is right on grade level, maybe a couple lessons behind. And so that kiddo's mastery is set at 80% because I don't need that kiddo to understand every single section and get every single problem right. I need that kiddo to understand the big picture of the concepts, get at least a B's level of work done so that they can move on to the next level, because that particular kiddo is probably not going into a mathy career, but they need the basic understanding. CTC allows the flexibility to do that. If you've got a kiddo, say in late elementary school, who is absolutely brilliant in math and can skip ahead to some high school level math, your subscription includes all the way up to calculus. You don't have to wait. You don't have to buy multiple levels of programs. If you've got a kiddo who you hit a snag and you realize, oh my gosh, we missed that section when we were learning third grade math and now we've got to go back to do it. You don't have to go out and buy a third grade math workbook. You just go to the section in the third grade math program level and have your kiddo do that. How flexible is that? You have every level from kindergarten all the way to calculus at your fingertips for a very affordable price. Check out ctcmath.com. If you go over to the show notes and you click on the link, it will give you whatever the current discount or special they're offering Raising Lifelong Learners listeners. And you can check that out and take advantage of that. I so appreciate CTC. I know you're going to love it. And if you don't, they have a money-back guarantee. So you really do have nothing to lose. If you have any questions about CTC, you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to answer those questions. All right, let's get back to today's episode. We can also use visual cues. There is huge power in having like signals with your kids, especially when your kids are younger. When my kids were younger, my one kid in particular who really struggled with impulse control, we had keywords at different times, or he was able to come up and place his hand on my shoulder, and I knew that was a signal he needed a break in a party situation, or we'd go for a walk. Using hand signals or like cue cards or different things to remind your kids to pause is a powerful way to help them then translate that to themselves and their own needs so that they can regulate themselves when they start to feel themselves getting out of control or become impulsive. Kids can also struggle with emotional impulse control. This is when they have trouble managing big feelings or big reactions to things. I remember a time when we were going to an amusement park and my son was all geared up because he was finally ready to ride the roller coaster he'd been dreaming of riding for a long time. And of course, Murphy's Law, that roller coaster was down for repair when we were there and he could not ride it. And at first he was angry and frustrated. And this was the worst day ever. And he wasn't going to ride any other rides. And we finally had to take him aside and say, look, we have two choices. We can't go home because your siblings deserve this day and we've paid for it. But one of us will go sit with you and we can just sit while the other one rides, and then the two adults will just switch places every hour or so. What do you want to do? Do you want to just suck it up and ride the rides that are available and have the best time you can possibly have while dealing with the disappointment of the roller coaster you wanted to ride not being available? Or do you just want to sit? And he opted to ride the rides that were available and he had a great time. But our kids who struggle with impulse control struggle with managing big feelings and letdowns and reactions to things. They have meltdowns when plans change. They get overly frustrated when things don't go their way. They take little snubs as major infractions, and it's hard to bring them back from it. So we need to find ways to manage that. Kids with emotional impulse control challenges also get frustrated easily. Maybe when they're dealing with a new topic in one of their subjects that they've never come across and it's harder for them than others have been. Maybe they're frustrated because a game is not working out the way they wanted it to, or they're losing, or they can't master a skill in a sport that they wanted to, and so they just melt down or they give up. Kids with emotional impulse control issues also struggle with delayed gratification. So these are kids who are like sneaking the snacks that are in the kitchen, hiding things from you, taking toys without asking, taking things that belong to other people because they want what they want and they want it now, and they struggle to delay the gratification and look forward to something. Some of the things we can do in our homeschool to help our kiddos out when they struggle with emotional impulse control issues is creating a calm down space, a quiet corner with sensory tools, books, or fidgets. I have several posts on the website about how to do this. I also have some resources in the Learners Lab about this. So I will post links to the resources on the website that are free for you to go take a look at about how to create what's good in a calm down corner or a calm down space, what kinds of sensory tools can help calm kids down when they're overly frustrated and emotional. And then I'll also obviously link to the Learners Lab if you want to join us in there. You can also use what's called the pause and plan technique, teaching kiddos to stop, breathe, and think through solutions before they let themselves get overwhelmed by all the possibilities or all the things that can go wrong. Stop, take a deep breath, and think about a couple different solutions that might work, and then choose one of them. We can also use storytelling with our kids. We can read or tell stories about characters who struggle with emotions, and then find creative ways to deal with them. And so there's lots of books available about those kinds of topics, and I have some book lists on the site, so I'll link those in the show notes as well. Or you can just make up stories if you are creative like that, so that your kids can see their characters or hear their characters getting into little scrapes and getting frustrated. We can also teach our kids to practice self-talk. We can also teach our kids to practice good self-talk. Teaching our kids to say, I can handle this, or I need a break, or I'll try again later, is powerful. This is something that they will be able to use forever for their entire lives. There have been so many times when I've said, I just need a break. I just need a minute to myself, and I can come back and work on this again later. Teaching our kids how to do this early by modeling it or encouraging them to do it is seriously a skill that will benefit them for their entire lives. Finally, a lot of our kiddos who struggle with impulse control also struggle with academic impulse control, right? They get frustrated and rush through their assignments, or they skip steps in math or writing, or they struggle to stay on task. Their schoolwork's a hot mess because they can't focus themselves. The other day I was at, it was a voice lesson or something with my daughter, and my youngest sent me a screenshot of a math problem he was working on with a frown face that he had drawn on it using the Paint app on his iPad. And I texted him back and said, is everything okay? You can try it again. Just take the lesson again. And he's like, no, I knew the answer. This is just one problem. I just wanted to show you I knew the answer, but I rushed and I wrote down the wrong thing. And so I encouraged him, first, that's awesome that you noticed that and you recognize that's what you did. And second, okay, now you're going to slow down. That's awesome. So great recollection, great reflection, great picturing what you needed to do to make yourself even better. Some of the other things that we can do besides that kind of talking with our kids is we can give them brain breaks and movement-based learning. So give them short breaks to reset their focus. My friend Cindy West has some great brain break activities and resources on her site, so I'll link those in the show notes. But we can also take movement breaks. We can go do jumping jacks. We can go jump on the trampoline. I used to have my oldest ride his bike in laps around the cul-de-sac of the house that we used to live at the time. So I'd be like, oh, go do 5 laps around the cul-de-sac, and he'd either run or he'd ride his bike. And then if he were really squirrely, I'd be like, okay, it's 11 laps today, or just go run 1 lap and come back. You're going to be great. And so that would work really well for him. We can also give our kids the challenge to slow down their thinking, encourage them to explain their thinking before answering, explain what they're doing, show you the steps that they're taking if they're continually rushing through things, so that they learn to step back and reflect. We can give them timed reflection, teaching them to use a sand timer to pause before completing their work, think about what they're going to do before. When I taught in a classroom and we were working on creative thinking skills, I would give them the challenge, but I wouldn't give them the materials. I would give them a certain amount of time that they had to think about the way they were going to tackle the problem before they had the opportunity even to tackle the problem. Because I knew several of them struggled with impulse control and would jump in before fully thinking it through, and then they'd blow not only their time, but their opportunities for success. So by giving them time to really reflect on the problem, the challenge, and the materials they were going to be given before they were given those materials, they were able to come up with a better plan for success. Finally, we can gamify their attention. We can turn focusing skills into a challenge or a game. How much longer can you focus on your math today versus yesterday? Or do you think you can do 10 problems before you need to do some jumping jacks or a lap around the cul-de-sac? Yesterday you managed to do 6. And make it fun and make it a challenge, not against each other, but against themselves. So they're pushing themselves a little bit more and a little bit more each day. Impulse control isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Our kids are going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. This is going to be something they're going to be working on most of their life. And our job is to do some of the strategies that I talked about in this episode so that they're building a toolbox of things that can help them grow in their impulse control skills throughout their lifetime. Small daily habits make a huge impact over time. And because we homeschool, we have the ability to provide personalized support for our kids so that we're helping to build that toolbox for them. Remember, you're not alone in this. Impulse control takes time, creativity, and flexibility, all of which we have with homeschooling. So you can help your kiddo build this essential skill. Here's what I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to try at least one of the strategies from today's episode and report back. Shoot me a message via email, text, or like a DM, or through the voicemail app on the show notes page, and let me know how your kiddos did. Observe where your kiddo struggles the most with impulse control and brainstorm a custom solution for your kid. Maybe one we didn't talk about, and then let me know what that is. What worked for you? I would love to know that. Share your thoughts within the community, within the Learners Lab if you're a part of the Learners Lab, or on social media and tag me so I can reshare it. I want to know what works for your family because we are better together and we can help each other find ways to support each other's kids. If you found this episode helpful or the strategies helpful, be sure to subscribe, but also share it with other homeschooling families who might need some support in this area, and leave a rating or review so others can find out about it. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, with another episode. I want to give a quick shout out to CTC Math, thanking them as usual for supporting this podcast, and encourage you anytime you need resources. Message me, shoot an email, and let me know too if you've got ideas for topics for the podcast or guests for the podcast, and keep in touch. All right, you'll find links to all the resources I talked about, as well as additional resources over on the show notes page for this episode at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And you can always reach out through social media or email me at support@raisinglifelonglearners.com. Have a great week. Enjoy your kids. Remember, patience and small daily habits build those long-term successes. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great week. Bye for now.